Damn!
Hello and welcome back to the Garage series. This is the second video in the series designed to deep dive into different components of tuning and explain the pros and cons of making targeted adjustments, enabling you to get the most out of your car. Today we're talking about suspension. This is one of the most time-consuming and most important parts of your tuning setup to get right, and will have a dramatic effect on the overall handling and feel of your car. So for this video, our goal is to get a better understanding of how the suspension works, why you'd want to adjust it, and the impact of making those changes to the overall performance of the car. A lot of the material we're covering today is available to you in the Beyond the Apex section of your GT7 profile. I'd highly recommend any new player review the material. It's great for providing a foundational knowledge of the game, and it's incredibly well written. It's a handy resource available anytime you want to brush up on some knowledge. So what is a suspension? It's a system of tires, tire air, springs, shock absorbers, and linkages that connect a vehicle to its wheel and allows relative motion between the two. Suspension systems must support both road holding and handling and ride quality, so it's important to find the right balance between better performance and stability. This allows the driver to trust the car while at the same time pushing it to its limits on the track. For the purpose of today's video, we'll be talking about the fully customizable suspension, as it gives us the most options to tailor the car's handling to our specific needs. So why would you adjust it? Adjusting the suspension has a dramatic effect on the handling of the car, allowing the tuner to alter how the car redistributes weight as the car accelerates, brakes, and rolls. There are numerous components of the suspension, and they all work together to determine the overall car handling characteristics. While suspension tuning is highly subjective, there are a few guidelines to help you find the right settings that work for your car or track and tailor them to your liking. Ride height. Essentially, the lower the ride height, the better. The lower the ride height, the lower the center of gravity, which increases downforce while decreasing drag. This will raise the handling performance on a circuit. There are limitations. Ride height must be appropriate to the car and the track. Therefore, it's not a good idea to set the ride height so low that it scrapes the ground. Instead, you want to lower it and test out the impact before you move on to other aspects of the suspension. Typically, a best practice is to drop it into the range where you think you'll want it, and come back after fine-tuning all other aspects of the car to determine your final ride height. Anti-roll bars. By changing the roll stiffness of the front and rear using these anti-roll bars, you can adjust the steering characteristics of a car. This essentially allows you to adjust the level of understeer or oversteer. Raising the roll stiffness at the front of the car by using harder anti-roll bars makes the car understeer more, while increasing the roll stiffness at the rear will make the car tend to oversteer. Dampers. Dampers adjust how fast springs will extend or compress. If you ride a car without dampers, rapid deacceleration or returning will make the springs extend and compress very quickly, abruptly shifting the vehicle's posture. The dampers restrict these sudden movements to make these posture changes less aggressive. Think about driving over a bump on a road surface. You want the suspension to compress smoothly. If the compression of the damper is hard, it will delay the spring from compressing and the bump will lift the entire car. Softening the compression side of the damper allows the spring to compress slowly and makes for a smoother ride. You need to balance performance and traction versus ride quality with dampers. Camber. When looking at the car from the front, the car is set to negative camber if the bottom of the tires is set wider than the top of the tires. When the bottom of the tires is set narrower to the top of the tires, that is called positive camber. When turning, a car will lean towards the outside of a corner due to the centrifugal force. If you set the tires to a negative camber in advance, the tire will be perpendicular to the ground in this lean state. This camber angle is often adjusted with this tactic in mind. The goal is to maintain as much surface on the ground as possible, and that's where camber comes into play. Toe angle. The toe angle has a major effect on control and stability, as it directly affects the tuning radius and the slip angle of the tires. When the tires are angled inward in relation to the direction of travel, the toe angle is referred to as toe in. When pointed outward, it's called toe out. Setting the front tires to toe in and rear tires to toe out will generally produce oversteer characteristics. If you set it the other way with the front tires toe out and rear tires toe in, it will result in understeer. When you use toe out settings for the front tires, it is possible to make the turn in for cornering sharper. If the rear tires are set to toe in, it will also improve stability when accelerating out of corners. However, it is important to note that extreme toe in or toe out settings will result in a rough driving experience. Typically, toe angle is used sparingly, as it does have a pretty significant impact on the overall handling of the car. So general guidelines: You want the car to be as low as possible without bottoming out or preventing the front wheels from turning. Lowering the front of the car reduces the load on the rear wheels, creating a tendency to oversteer. Lowering the back of the car reduces the load on the front wheels, creating a tendency to understeer. So that's why it's better to stick with the same body height for the front and rear of the car, using only minor body height adjustments as the final setup in your car. If you lower the car, you'll need to increase the natural frequency accordingly. A lower car requires a more active suspension to prevent it from bottoming out. Natural frequency should be higher in the following situations: if you're lowering the ride height, as we just discussed, higher grip tires, and a higher downforce. You want to ensure that the suspension is accounting for any additional force you're applying to the car. Camber should be adjusted when you want to improve handling while cornering. Increased camber results in more contact with the ground on the outside tires. Damping is one of the final settings to adjust to further improve your handling. Stiffer settings tend to provide a bit more stability, but come with less lively handling and more significant road feedback. Lower damping typically results in more lively handling, but risks being a bit more unstable. Toe angle, as mentioned, just use small adjustments as needed, typically the last setting to adjust and with minimal amounts. So let's take a quick moment and look at an example of a tuned versus untuned suspension side by side. Now keep in mind the stock setup has additional components to it as well, so we're not necessarily looking for the overall performance of the car here, but just the handling characteristics. You'll see when we push this car into the corners, the back of the car has a tendency to kick out, the car rolls not concisely, and also the steering inputs are relatively sluggish. Then when you look at the adjusted suspension, which we've lowered, tightened, adjusted some dampening, you can actually see the car handles much better, it's a bit more responsive, and as a result you have a bit more confidence putting the car into and exiting the corner at higher speeds. Now, the suspension plays with other components of the car, so just for full disclosure, the car that we're looking at here has increased downforce. It also has adjustments to the LSD. All of these kind of work together to provide stability to the car. But where you want to focus on the suspension is basically how does it feel to roll the car, how does it feel to enter and exit a corner, and do you feel stable and do you feel you can push it to a higher limit? And that's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for that sweet spot of maintaining speed and momentum and losing control as you kind of angle the car. So in terms of overall process for adjusting the suspension, I tend to focus on ride height first, natural frequency second, anti-roll bars third, camber fourth, damping fifth, and toe angle last. It's really important to note that as you're making all these adjustments, you basically need to track the car continually. So adjust ride height, track the car, then move on to frequency, track the car, and just make minor adjustments each and every time so you can ensure that suspension is going in the right direction that you want it and the car feels much better as you're driving around the track. As always, pick a track you're familiar with and one that gives you multiple corners of varying speed to test out your tune. Suspension, I feel, is where the bulk of my time is when tuning a car, and to set up a car properly, it can easily take a solid 20 or 30 minutes of testing to get it to a point where you're happy with how the car is tracking. Again, this is one where you'll be making a bunch of frequent, small adjustments so you will know what you've adjusted and get a feel for what that impact of that change was on the driving characteristics of your car. I hope this guide helped explain the overall process of the suspension and why it's important to tailor it as part of your builds. This video is going to be part of a series of videos designed to deep dive certain tuning components and their respective mechanics. Any feedback on the content and or your own experience is welcome in the comments below. If you see value in this content and want to see more in the future, please help support my channel by liking the video and commenting below. It greatly helps with the growth of my channel on YouTube and helps steer me in the right direction for content creation. If you're looking to connect with others around gaming in general, feel free to join our 22 Gaming Community Discord. We're a growing community of like-minded mature gamers covering multiple titles. If you're looking to game with someone at any time, 22 Gaming has got you covered, as we have people all over the world in multiple time zones. As always, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.